Okay, Simon Dell, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate it. We've chatted a bit on email over the last couple of years now. Actually, time flies, especially in a pandemic. But it's really fantastic to meet you, sir.
Yeah, you too. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
Yeah, no, you are very much on our list of people that we wanted to have on Geeks Farner, so we really do appreciate it, because I think it's important to really for the hobby to meet the faces and the people behind these organisations, and especially people like yourself who are working so hard, frankly, to protect the hobby as well, and an awful lot of great work, which I thank you for. The first subject I wanted to talk about today was Article 16. Which the CAA Article 16 authorization, which to me is a beautiful thing. It's something that makes me smile whenever I see a comment from one of our viewers regarding it, or whenever I check it to check what I should be doing when I'm using it myself. It always brings a smile to my face, because it's so well worded. How did it come about?
Yeah, it's sort of, I think the European regulations did recognize that model associations were sort of a little bit hard to fit into these regulations they were writing, because it's all very well saying, okay, a new aircraft is going to be produced in a factory in China, and it's going to have a C rating, and then we can sort of marry these C ratings to these subcategories and say, okay, if it's a C0, it can fly here. If it's a C1, it can fly here. But how do you do that with existing stuff and homemade stuff, and which hasn't been made in a factory, doesn't comply to all those standards? So there was, at one point, they were trying to write a definition of a drone and a definition of a model aircraft, and that was their plan. That, okay, we'll have these regs for model aircraft, and we'll have these, but they couldn't really do it.
Okay.
And there was forget the numbers now, but there was a version that came out, and it's like, okay, in the next version we'll have the official definition, and then they scrapped it and said we can't do it. We just can't define it really, or they couldn't come up with a reliable definition. So there was this sort of carve out. Okay, well, if you remember an association, and the wording was, you should be able to carry on what you're doing today.
Excellent. Yes.
Yeah, which was, we don't particularly, we don't want any more particularly, but we definitely want to be able to carry on doing what we're doing. And with the regs as they were, for a lot of people, they wouldn't have been able to, as it was written, they wouldn't have been able to carry on. So yeah, so you've got this carve out, which kind of puts us under the specific category, as you know, and is very open in that it's anything up to 25 kilos, and you can basically crack on.
Yeah, I mean, it is fantastic, because of course we had that sort of initial period, especially last year, when it felt like this was coming in, and of course with Brexit and the pandemic and the delays, etc., and everything else like that, there was a lot of fear, frankly, from the model community, the FPV self-build community, and indeed so many camera drone operators that just like going to a park and flying their drone. You know, they're not looking to get London Bridge, or planes landing at Gatwick, or anything else like that. It was a concern, because a lot of those people felt, okay, am I now going to have a C class a drone and an A2 CofC, when actually all I really want to do is carry on my hobby, which I've been perfectly safe carrying out for decades. Because again, and so much of it is one of those things where it's funny, actually, because I'm a member of a local flying club myself, and it's something that I always try to put across to people, just how wide the type of quad and drone and model aircraft specification there is, and I can completely understand where they failed to be able to reach a definition and a line to separate those two things, because it is very, very difficult. It is also ironic that, of course, with some model aircraft, it's almost like trying to legislate a motorcycle to be a car almost sometimes. So I think the Article 16 sort of came, as you're saying, it came in the middle of that to really create a line and say, actually, the FPV flyer, the heli scale flyer that's down the local park, hover testing and that type of thing, you can carry on and do that. the feedback that we gained initially, there was some resistance to the point of view that you had to be a member of an organization and that type of thing. But to me, I felt that was probably more born from the whole public liability insurance side of things.
Well, I think it's they need somebody to be accountable, and although we're not directly accountable if you do something wrong, we are very much more accountable than we previously were, in that our handbook is now approved by the CAA. We are audited. We have to have a reporting procedure that they audit. Previously, none of that existed. So the basis on which people are allowed these extra freedoms are that they're following our guidance, they're following our handbook, they've agreed to do both of those things, and that there's sort of a feedback loop there that when somebody has a problem, has some accident or incident, they report that to us, we learn from it, we publish that back out to our membership, we modify our handbook, and then everybody follows that new guidance. That's sort of the logic, I think, that
yes,
there is something they can get a handle on, and say, you need to change this, your members need to be aware to change this. And I think that's why it's tied to associations. So we are, as you know, operational authorization number, and that's on our handbook. We are quite tightly.
Yes, which is interesting that you talk about operational authorization. Actually, and you mentioned the word specific before, and I think that is worth explaining to the audience from the point of view that this isn't just a blanket piece of paper that says, okay, model aircraft or drones up to 25 kilogram can do X, Y, and Z. This is an OA under the specific category. So this isn't technically, although you're flying obviously in open category areas, this is something which essentially FPVUK and the other organizations, you are registering yourselves as specific airspace operators, and then of course us lucky members get to use that operational authorization if we stick to your terms, conditions, etc.
Exactly, yeah. So it's a little bit like a drone filming company with 5 staff. They go and get their operational authorization, and they've got their 5 flyers who go out, and they're all under that OA. We're sort of the same thing, that as you just said, that our members are under our OA, and we sort of collectively, but we as the association will get the flack if somebody flying under our OA is doing something they shouldn't be.
Which again, I like the feeling of togetherness that kind of brings as well within the organizations, that we're all looking after each other. Every single person taking that Article 16 flight is looking after someone hundreds of miles away flying in another park, frankly, and the responsibility, the accountability is there. Obviously public liability insurance is a huge benefit when specifically the Article 16 is going to be you are going to be flying around people. Now, talking about some of the specifics, because there's one specific that I wouldn't mind getting your just sort of direct feedback on as well, which is the takeoff separations. Obviously, there's the 30-meter separation from uninvolved people to be able to take off. But then you have this extra potential of reducing that to 15-meter with mitigating actions. What to you would be mitigating actions to allow me, let's say I'm flying either my FPV drone or my camera drone at the local park, and I want to bring that down to 15 meters. Do I need to go out and get cordons and that type of thing, or?
Yeah, it's not really specified that, but it's a risk assessment that you have looked into this, and they try not to be too sort of specific, if you like, too prescriptive, because they can write something and then you go to your particular location and it doesn't make any sense. Whereas if they're fairly generic, can say you've looked at this, you've assessed the risk, and you can do that safely, then you can. But how you want to do that is entirely up to you, as long as you're confident that you've met that. And it could be anything. It could be a cordon. It could be there's a big stone wall there, so actually it's covered anyway. It could be that you're flying a type of aircraft that that has guarded propellers, so you're comfortable that it is safe to do this.
Yes.
It could be a myriad of things, and it's always, I think, when people are applying for anything with the CAA, but I'm thinking back to CAOSCs, the congested area operational safety case, where it might be, you've got redundancy and you've got a parachute perhaps on your drone, and it's all things like that. These are the risks, this is the severity, this is how can I reduce those down? And as long as you've come up with a way of doing it that makes you confident that you can do it, and not to put too fine a point on it, but it'll come down, in the worst possible case, you standing in a courtroom and saying, right, this is my risk assessment, this is why I decided that it was okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And if you're comfortable with that, that's fine. I'm sure you would be, that because you've done it safely, and that's good.
It is about safety, isn't it? It isn't about catching people out. It isn't about throwing hobbyists in jail for landing 14 meters of uninvolved people, etc. It is about, and that's something that I very much learned with my conversations with the CAA, especially in more recent months, that it is about safety. They want the hobby to operate in a safe manner. They're not sat there thinking, how can I stop that FPV flyer from flying in his local park, etc.
No, quite right. And if you're doing something super dangerous, but you've measured exactly 30 meters or something, and you get away with it, you are not being safer than somebody who is maybe flying 15, but they've taken mitigation steps to make sure they are being safe.
Excellent. Thank you very much for those explanations. I think it was important to try and position the Article 16 in our viewers' minds effectively as well, from the point of view of saying that this is a fantastic thing, but again, take the accountability, take the responsibility yourself as well, and that it is, view this like an operational authorization rather than just a free ticket. Now, there was a recent update to the Article 16, wasn't there, with some of the, because again, and it was interesting actually in one of my earlier videos on Article 16, it's something which came up from the point of view of camera drones flying specifically under Article 16, and what kind of automated operations that you can actually carry out, things like follow me and return to home and that type of thing. And there was a little bit of sort of muddied water, as it were, from the point of view again of interpretation. When there isn't a set template, there can be interpretation, but obviously things like using return to home, of course, is perfectly permissible, and of course in some situations safer than bringing it back manually, rather than having to cancel it and then precariously bring something back in ATI mode or something.
Well, just let me pick up on that.
Thank you.
That's something I pushed for because but like you say, in an emergency scenario, surely it makes sense. You're not gonna I was thinking about manned aviation. I was thinking about, one of the pilots is incapacitated, the other pilot doesn't technically have a license. I went down a whole sort of theory of like, well, you're not allowed to do that. Well, yes, but if it's an emergency, all bets are off. And CAA agreed, if there's an issue, you can push it, your aircraft can automatically do it. Let's say if the battery gets low or it loses signal from your transmitter or whatever, it can fly back automatically. What they don't want you to do is, as you know, is automation. They're not really wanting people to fly around automatically, where the drone is making its own decisions of where it goes, and that if you, as a matter of course, press return to home every time you sort of at the end of your sortie, you push the button and it comes back. That's not really in the spirit of it. But as an emergency thing, as a fail-safe, essentially.
Yes,
it's literally a fail-safe.
Indeed.
Yeah, and I suppose, if you like, I'll go on to the next bit, which was about the automated modes. So the first definition, which was in the first authorization, was, I can't remember. I think it was, you must not fly, or you must fly with physical control sticks.
That's right. Yes.
And I sort of said, after a bit, like, but what about touchscreen? And what about the motion controllers? And what about gesture control? Because they're both, all of those are, it's only moving if I tell it to. It's not making its own decisions and moving around the sky of its own accord. It's, I am giving it a positive action to move, and then it moves. So what we eventually came up with, well, and to go a bit further than the control elements, was the things like panorama mode or selfie mode, or even just position hold, where it's in a wind, so it's kind of technically it's moving, it's just in wind, but it's not moving in physical space. So that was the wording that we agreed in the end, that that it can be, I forget the wording now, but as long as it doesn't move in physical space, basically, and it must be direct control inputs. So it doesn't actually say physical control sticks anymore.
Yes,
they were the two main changes. And we didn't go as far as naming the modes, because I started listing them out. You've got panorama, you've got selfie, you've got position hold, and but the manufacturers come up with new modes all the time.
That's
so
right.
So let's just say it doesn't move in physical space, and then we sort of cover if you want to play with all those modes. So really, the main one that it doesn't cover, or main two, follow me and waypoints.
Yes, so like your sort of your auto orbits and yes, yeah, as you're saying, yeah, indeed, yeah, no, indeed. Which again, to me, I think that does make sense, and it is good. The new wording again, I think is clear enough that it prevents the previous issues of people thinking, okay, I have to almost be in ATI mode with my drone the entire time and that type of thing. And again, actually, that isn't necessarily a safer way to fly. So
no,
having panorama, position hold, and being able to use return to home as that backup will also give the hobbyists, because we are talking about hobby flyers here with varying levels of experience, it will give them more confidence. It will allow them to think, if something does go wrong, I do still have my return to home button, and I know I can bring that back, and I'm not going to get in trouble for trying to do the safest thing, basically. Which I think is,
quite, which is perverse. I think we've got a semblance of sensible wording there. I mean, I've actually been pushing for it just to say, because this is all in everything we're talking about here is in the definition of a model aircraft at the top of the document. And I said, why don't we just have the definition of model aircraft is an unmanned aircraft used for recreational purposes. That's it. Unfortunately, they're not keen on that. But at the moment, we've got this sort of 2 paragraphs of a model aircraft used for recreational purposes, not flown automated, except if it doesn't move it in physical, etc., etc. And then I think the main reason for that, Article 16 can't be a sort of backdoor round the open category rules.
Do you have any thoughts as far as the ongoing side of Article 16? Because of course it's every year it's renewed technically at the moment.
So that'll be part of our audit process, which I mentioned before. We haven't had one yet, but so I'll let you know how that goes. But obviously, if I'm reporting, or they've had reports, but it should really be that I'm reporting, because we have a log of all the reports to us. Then it will be tweaked to change that. It will be tweaked to address, sort of as I said before, that's an opportunity to review what's working, what's not working, and it's sort of a pragmatic approach, isn't it? And it's been like that with the CAA since I first spoke to them in 2009, and we managed to get that first FPV exemption. And the first year it was limited to 1 kilo aircraft, 400 feet, and at the time there was no limit for model aircraft, and certain limits. And then after a year, we went back and they said, right, okay, so you've not killed anyone, good. Let's see if we can expand it a bit more. And we pushed for 3.5 kilos and et cetera, et cetera. And it sort of went on for the, whatever that was, 12 years, 13 years, until it was rolled into FPVs kind of rolled into the new regs. So that's the process that they follow, and it makes sense. Pragmatic, measuring as you go, working out what's any problems and addressing those with guidance or updated procedures or whatever. One thing I will.
Yes, please, Karen.
I was just going to say one thing I will take the opportunity to mention is we do need members to report incidents, because in 2 or 3 months I'll be sitting down with the CAA and they'll be going through all our incident reports, and there's not been a great many of them so far. So I know it seems like a crazy thing to do, and I've said this to the CAA. If you go out and fly your fixed wing aircraft and I don't know, one of the wheels comes off on landing, sitting down and writing an accident report is perhaps over the top, but that is technically what's required. And it'd be great if I've got a few, partly because I'd like to go and bang the drum and say, look, I've got all these reports of wheels falling off, or all these things happening, a guy accidentally overran the runway and landed in a hedge. It'd be great to be able to say, do we really need to be reporting these insignificant things? Can we not put a threshold on it? But at the moment, I haven't really got a lot either way. So I would encourage our members, and it's the same with the other associations, to do log these things. Don't worry, no job too small. Do log them anyway, and particularly if somebody was injured or an aircraft was endangered, then even more so. That will also have to be reported to the CAA itself, which will assist with, and the AAIB, the Air Accident Investigation Branch, as well. But really important that we get some reports in to show that this Article 16 thing is working, that we are using the feedback loop. Because if I go and say, well, sorry, nobody reported anything, they're not going to say, oh, brilliant, you're doing fantastically well. They're going to say, well, that's not really the plan here. That wasn't really the...
Exactly. It feels almost counterintuitive to say
does.
I'm going to report
agree.
incidents, but actually, if they're presented with X, as you say, X 100 or X 1,000 minor reports, and there are no injuries, there are no fatalities, there's no XYZ, and there's no wider complaints from general aviation, that type of thing, etc., then actually it shows that does give you, ironically, the foundations to be able to eradicate some of the lower level reporting. Behind all of this, of course, is FPVUK, which of course is an association people can join with a host of membership benefits. It's currently $19.99 for 12 months. Is that right?
That's right, $19.99. Yeah. Which
is pretty good. So it comes with it's the headlines, as it were, are the 5 million public liability insurance, the Article 16 operational authorization, and I'm actually going to start calling it that now in my videos, because I always call it Article 16 authorization, but of course it is an operational authorization. Fantastic. Automatic CAA registration, which of course is optional, and the plastic membership card, which is optional as well.
You do, I've got it on my other screen here. So one is a new one, Moonrock Insurance. So they now offer a hobbyist drone insurance policy, which is covers your drone itself, against accidental damage, against flyaways, and they will organize repair of your drone, or if it can't be repaired, they'll replace it with a brand new one. 10% off that by putting in your FPVUK number. You also get 10% off at Drone Doctor, a repair center, DJI recommended repair center, which I used to own.
Yes, indeed.
Back in the day.
You can definitely recommend that one.
I can, then you get 50% off at both UAV Hub and UAV Academy off an A2 CofC course.
Excellent.
Now I mentioned before about the you don't necessarily need an A2 CofC course if you're flying under the Article 16, but many of our members do want to go and do one, either because they want to fly under the open category rules from time to time, or they do commercial work, for instance. So if you do want to do one, you can, and you get 50% off by using the code that's in your FPVUK account.
Excellent.
Drone Authority and FPV World. So Drone Authority is sort of FPV freestyle and racing equipment, and FPV World is FPV drones and sort of parts for those parts, and there's a bit of crossover as well. They sell FPV gear as well. It's 6% off at Drone Authority and 5% off at FPV World. 10% off courses at iRed, Global Drone Training, Copters, 3IC. You also get 10% off at Cotswold Outdoor and Snow and Rock.
Awesome.
Yeah, the actual high street outdoor clothing stores. We thought that might be quite a nice one.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, and I'm trying to approach more companies like that. We've actually a bit of a random one. We've also got where is it? Urban Nomads Motorcycle Clothing. So one of our members runs that store, I think, and he approached me and said, "We'll happily give 10% off to your membership." So
brilliant.
10% off if you're after some motorcycle clothes. Slightly at a tangent, but we've got Heli Guy, 7.5% off approved used, 5% off selected Mavic drones, and there's also a discount off training, 5% off any of their training courses, basically. Also a company called County Supplies, who sell like a drone flying kit, which is like warning drone flying and some safety cones. And
very cool,
and a fire extinguisher and a high-vis jacket and a hard hat and safety goggles and a little first aid kit and an anemometer and a landing pad, and you get 5% off one of those.
Very cool.
There's a few things like that. These are all, I've refreshed them recently, gone to all of the partners and updated them with their latest deals. And I'm continuing to speak to people and try and build that list, because I think it's quite good. People get good value.
That is a really good list already, actually. So yeah, no, it is fantastic. Yes, and one other thing that I noticed as well, of course, regular viewers of Geeksvana will notice previously we had a video talking about the fact that we can now fly in the EU, taking the A1, A3 certificate. Luxembourg, for instance, offer it free of charge. From the insurance side of things, of course, the FPVUK indemnity, public liability insurance, that's actually usable in the EU as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, all the EU countries plus Norway and Switzerland.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that's anyone who's normally resident in the UK can go and fly that. I think it's it's designed for people on holiday. What we can't do is ensure. We can't have members who live in France, for instance.
Yes, no, absolutely.
We can. We actually have members in Hokkaido, Japan, and Hong Kong.
Wow.
But it's when they come to the UK to fly that they're covered.